Hi, welcome from Australia. My name is Chrissy, and in this video I'm going to be giving you a channeled reading for around the globe and all the current energies and the chaos and the things that have been going on and how we can go about navigating these things. Now I'm just going to let my guides just channel through me and I'll just get the messages to you. So I guess if you've tapped on this video, there's more than likely some sort of message in here that you're meant to receiving. Now I have had comments from Germany, Sweden, Canada, Italy. I have had comments from everywhere, so pretty much this is affecting everyone right around the globe. And like I said, here in Australia we've certainly had a journey. We've just suddenly got some freedoms back, so it's been a really nice week here and people are feeling a lot more relaxed, and there's a bit more of a sense of peace at the moment. I'm not sure how long that's going to last for, but anyway, I'll just get started and I'll close my eyes and we'll just see what comes through. Now I'm getting that clear message that there is a huge uprising. It's almost like an uproar, like the voices are really coming together and they're getting louder and louder and louder and louder. And people feel they're getting to a sense now where they feel like they won't be able to forgive themselves if they don't support and get behind what is currently going on, particularly around the mandates. I think people are starting to break through and see that, hang on a minute, if they mandate this, what else are they going to mandate next? And I think that's definitely the reason that people are really trying to get that sort of voices on volume, like that the masses are coming together. That's definitely the message that I'm seeing at the current energy at the moment. The date is the 17th of December, just in case you're curious when this reading is. I feel like I did have someone who was Canadian the other day, and I feel like the message for anyone living in Canada, you feel very startled. So it's almost like you've got a fright. So I think what's happening in Canada is people are very, very shocked and overwhelmed. People are actually in Canada, I feel like, are grieving their old life. So it's almost like the shock has been so horrendous that they've even started to grieve their old life, because I feel like people actually realise that life isn't going to be the same anymore. Everything seems so regimented in that country. I feel like things have really broken down. And that's definitely around people's connections. Things are really sort of running rife. I feel like Canada has taken a really, really big hit, and they're going to be really affected, I feel like, financially. Emotionally, they're really struggling now. I feel like anyone who's living in Canada, I feel like you feel very, very, very isolated in your madness. And I don't think that's just the unvaccinated. I feel like that's the vaccinated as well. I think people have actually gone into a lot of shock because they thought, okay, we've got our green passes, everything's fine, we can move forward. But now people are starting to realise, and as well as you guys out in Canada are as well, that that's not going to be the case. You're going to have to get more and more and more things to combat this so-called virus, and otherwise you're not going to be able to go anywhere, do anything, and everything's working in conjunction with everything else. So it almost feels like to a lot of people in Canada that it's a huge giant setup, and like everything's been set up and now here we are. And I think that's what's really startled and shocked people, is like, how did we get here? So I feel like there's a lot of this emotional energy in Canada about the grieving of their old lives. Like, where did our life go? It's like we just clicked our fingers and suddenly we were transported into another world. And honestly, that is what is happening. And in my 2021 video, if you watch that, I talk about the New World Order, and I actually talk about some of these things happening this year and the divides and the big divisions that are going to happen. And here we are. This is exactly how it's played out. So I definitely get that message for Canada, that they're very startled and feeling very overwhelmed and in shock. And it's almost that grief is rising up in people about their old life and where did it go? It's sort of like all a bit of a blur. I feel like Italy's quite stable. Italy's doing things by rote. So they're, yep, we clock in here, yep, we get checked there, yep, we sign out there, yep, we get injected there, yep, we boosted there, and they're a lot more methodical. So I feel like in Italy, there's sort of less chaos. There's a bit more conformity in their culture, and I think that's just a part of them sort of, and it's not a bad thing, but they're kind of accepting things and going with the flow a bit more. I feel like Italy's kind of one of those countries that's been faced with a lot of heartache around this pandemic, so I feel like it has hit people very hard in Italy. But Italy's going to grow and come out of this quite, not unscathed, but they're going to come out of it, using their logical mind. Their logical mind's going to go, hang on a minute, what's actually happening here? And they're going to start to think for themselves. So I feel like Italy rather, and places like in that Mediterranean are kind of going to start to think for themselves. There's going to start to be a bit more clarity. What's been hidden will now become truths. So it's like things can't be hidden behind the curtain there anymore. I feel like Italy's starting to really, because they have gone with the flow, they have less resistance. So it's like they have clearer thought space. When you're not resisting things, you don't push things away, things come towards you. So I feel like the truths are sort of coming towards people in Italy. Now Israel comes up, of course. It's like that blast from the past. Israel to me feels like it's reliving the nightmare over and over and over again. And it's almost like, it's saying like the tall poppy syndrome, which here in Australia, if we think about the tall poppy syndrome, that's when people try to kind of drag you down to their level. So I feel like Israel is one of these countries that's been talked about a lot. So Israel's sort of setting that pace, and it's being talked about a lot. But Israel is trying to kind of separate itself from that now. They're trying to sort of get on with things, and they're trying to see things differently because they realise what they've been doing has not been working, and it's just all repeating itself. So I feel like Israel's going to really take a stance now and sort of try and regain their power back, and somehow managing the way that they're dealing with this kind of pandemic. And I get America the brave. Now, Americans are so tired. I think I said this in my other video. Americans are just so tired of and exhausted from the policies. They're exhausted from the dishonesty. They feel like they've been absolutely taken for a huge ride. It doesn't feel like this is all natural for them. They started off and they jumped on board the train kind of thing, but now it almost feels like it's showing me someone who's kind of hanging on to the door of the train. The train's moving and leaving the platform, but it's like Americans are half on and half off. So it's like they're wanting to put their foot down onto that platform and jump off the train, but they're still kind of hanging on because there's that little bit of sort of uncertainty. Is like, is this really happening? Like, what's happening in our lives? As much as they want to jump on the train, they also want to get off it. So this is about that confusion now, and the uncertainty, because they're seeing the proof of what's not working. It's not working. Getting vaccinated and boosters and this is not working for them anymore, and they don't want to just keep going down on that sort of train track. They want to jump off and go another way, but they're thinking, well, what is the other way? So I think this is where a lot of the confusion comes in, because no one really has the answers over here. Like, if this is such a bad pandemic and they're making out certainly that it is, then what's the alternative? We stay on this path, which isn't working, or what's our alternative? And I think that's kind of the question mark in America. There's a lot of people who are really questioning things now, because they're thinking, well, are there other alternatives? I know a lot of things have been talked about here in Australia. They've come up with something, and there's also things about vitamin D and really getting your health right. So maybe people are starting to think, well, is that an avenue that we could sort of follow, instead of just following this avenue where it's making lots and millions and zillions and billions of dollars for big pharma and government, and it's also costing the government. And I think people are seeing that money could be channeled into other things as well. So I feel like America's definitely having this big uprising where people are starting to sort of try and make decisions now of, do they keep going or do they jump off? So yeah, definitely a lot of confusion in America. Well, Australia comes up as well, and the quote is like, we used to be the lucky country, and now I would say we're the, I'm trying to put it politely without swearing, the beeped up country. We've had so many protest marches, people are angry, we've had mandates. Australia is really heading towards capitalism, and it's not sitting right with us. We used to always have freedom. We were the lucky country. We were known as that. I know if you've been watching videos of us around the world, everyone's been quite shocked at what has gone on in Melbourne and Victoria, and it's not sitting right with the people here. I live in a different state, and we're very fortunate that in New South Wales we actually have our masks off now. A lot of these things are sort of easing off the restrictions, but there's still a lot of states around Australia that are really struggling with their lockdowns. And this is right across the country. This isn't just in Australia either. But in Australia, we're trying to build bridges now. And I think it's kind of like America as well. We're trying to build these bridges and like reconnect our lives again, because it's almost like there's been floods and water in between, and it's kept people apart. And I just don't mean because of the pandemic. I mean, there's a lot of things, and I think we're all aware of it out there, that have socially affected people as well. And that's meaning the different, if you think about it, it's those low socioeconomic, and then there's the wealthy, and then there's all the sort of divisions as well that people have really started to notice that have been going on the news. You tend to hear about the suburbs that are kind of the struggling suburbs that I know here in Australia we had, for example, and I'm sure where you are this has probably happened too, the elite suburbs and the quite well-to-do suburbs are never mentioned on the news, and the police just sort of lock them down, and that's fine. But when it comes to the sort of lower class, middle class, some of these areas, we've actually had curfews where people had to be in their homes by 9 o'clock at night. We've had police on horses going around their neighbourhoods, ensuring that they're home, knocking on their doors. There's been a lot of this kind of division as well, and that's about races. It's about that, like I said, their economic status. So this isn't just about the virus. This is about the way things are being sort of staged and directed as well, and that's what's definitely happening here in Australia. And I think that's why people are wanting to kind of build these bridges again. You know, in the world, really, we've all gone so far with mixing of cultures and accepting each other. Why would we want to go back to these kind of dystopian kind of ways of thinking, and the separation and segregation? You know, it's very, very unhealthy. So I'm definitely seeing a lot of this, trying to build the bridges, and that's a slow process. I feel that's going to be a slow process. You know, it takes years to kind of build a bridge, literally. So it's going to take sort of years to find our way back, because it's been 2 or 3 years now we've all kind of been going through these crazy pandemic times. Now, there's a lot of movement around trains, buses, and they're showing you like that herd immunity. So they're kind of shoving people into trains, shoving people into buses. It's like, you go this way, you go that way. We'll take you to this destination, you go to that destination. And this is how I feel like it's all being directed. So it's almost like a stage show that's being directed. So if you've got these many shots, you can go there, but if you've got no shots, you can go here. If you're from that suburb, you can mix with this suburb. So there's still a lot of this kind of, this is happening right around the world. There's a lot of them and us, and it's in all areas, and people don't like it. People are sick of it, they're jack of it, and they've had enough. People want to start to build these bridges, and I'm getting that for everybody around the globe. Even in the South Pacific, people on any of these sort of islands and places like that, they're feeling very isolated, and it almost scares them, because they feel isolated from the mainlands and the main populations. This is around all across the globe. These small places feel like they have no power, and no one's kind of protecting them or looking out for them. So I think that's an issue that is kind of, because we've got to remember too, they've lost a lot of tourism. Things haven't been circulating so it hasn't had that normal sort of vibe in a lot of these islands and places like that as well, until everything starts getting back to normal. And again, that's that building the bridges, about being able to fly to these sort of isolated places as well and getting them back to normal too, because they're feeling quite unsupported at the moment. Places, all sorts of places like Fiji, I think I've talked about that before, and smaller places like that. Any sort of island has felt quite isolated and a little bit left out of how to move forward during this pandemic kind of experience. So we also have to look at sort of supporting these places as well once the borders all start opening up and we can have that sort of travel overseas. That's something to really consider. I feel like in Sweden and Denmark, there's a lot hidden. I feel like this is around Parliament. There's being, I feel at the current time, there's being really huge discussions on moving forward. Mandates, I feel, are being rejected, and they're being rejected on a very large scale, not just in these countries, but most people are not wanting them. You get the majority that do think it keeps people safe. However, I really believe that the mandates are not going to be carried right through. I feel like they're going to put certain deadlines on them. So they're going to say, well, just to get through the Christmas period and to January, we're going to mandate this, but then there will be a shift after those dates. So I think Sweden, Denmark, I think the UK, I think they will start to put like a date on this. So for anyone who is like unvaccinated or feels like they've just been pushed aside, I think you have to see that these are just temporary things. They're not going to stay. They're not going to make people do this for like a year to 2 years. That's not going to happen. So you have to have faith too that this is only for a short period of time that we're all being affected. You've got to know that you haven't done anything wrong, and these are just measures that they're putting in place in order to keep everybody safe. But we know that there's usually more hidden agendas with that as well. So don't sort of be fearful and frightened if they're talking about this kind of thing, because they will come to a point. I know some countries have actually said that people can't go into supermarkets and this kind of thing for basic human needs, but I can't see that lasting. I just can't see how that legislation or that's going to be able to be carried through. I feel that they've just done that to scare people. That's a real scare campaign to me, to really get vaccine numbers up and really get people having their boosters, and it's again all this push, and it's pushing people back again to get that control and get them in line and doing what they're wanting to achieve, which is achieve these goals of bringing up their targets. So I'll just see what else comes through. It's sort of showing me, the visual I'm getting is like the ship is rising. So it's like we've gone over this huge wave in this big ship, and this is everyone together, and the wave, we've cut through the wave, and the front of the ship is coming right up, ready to land. So it's almost like we're riding that wave at the moment, and it feels like everyone's a little nervous, like where's this heading? Are we going to crash? Are we going to tip over? What's actually going to happen? But it's saying just stay strong. So even though you might be panicking and you're at that top of the ship thinking, oh, what's going to happen? This is such a big wave. And this is just the analogy that they're giving me. Just hang on. So hang on, because you will eventually just come down that other side. And look, ships are pretty strong. You know, it's very rare that you hear of ships going through massive seas and just being totally destructed. It's not a common thing. So hang on, the message is, and just keep riding that wave, because we've got the ship up and we're going to make those changes coming down that other side. And the landing will be like a big drop. It's showing me like that big thud, and all the waves are going to splash. And then again, it'll be that calmer seas on the other side. I feel like people at the moment, right around the globe, their feelings are kind of being pretty neutralized. I feel like a lot of people this year in 2021 had a lot of angst. They had so many fears, and they also felt knotted up and quite sick in the stomach at times because of the unknown. But it's almost like everything that's been bombarding us has almost desensitized us now. It's like you hear some other, with the Omicron, and you're like, oh yeah, here we go, another one. And this is what's kind of happening. It's like that we've been desensitized now. The fears aren't rising as much. Yes, there is a minority of people that do get very scared, and some of the elderly sometimes get a bit panic stricken. But I think a lot of us are kind of going, well, we're still here, we're still going, we're still having to live our lives. We've been locked down and on and off for 2 years. Like, well, what are we going to do about it? Like, nothing's changing. People are vaccinated. We're still dealing with the virus. So this is where that, do I hop on or get off? And this is where it's becoming more neutral. Things are starting to soften. People aren't freaking out. People are starting to turn off the news because they are questioning a lot of things. So I feel like people are trying to find that more neutral place now where they get that balance right of living their life and having joy. Like, I'm out here in the garden with the dogs. You might be doing whatever you want to do. Well, some people can't, of course, but fortunately I've got the freedom here in New South Wales in Australia. But this is what people are looking for. They're looking for the balance. Okay, we've got to be aware that these things might be going on in the background, but also we've got to live our life. Life is here to be lived, and we don't want to stay stuck in suffering, feeling horrible, overwhelmed. Suicide would have to be on the rise. I don't even doubt that for 1 second. And I think the other big point that we all need to be looking at around the globe is really taking care of our children. This has overwhelmed us as adults. We get angry, we get frustrated. Imagine what our children are feeling, because they are a real reflection of our own emotions and the things that we are struggling with. So I think you've also got to look at really starting to detach from a lot of these things, because we've got to start to take care of our kids, because kids are the thing that are starting to absorb a lot of these feelings, emotions, and the confusion that's going on out there. They must really feel it as well, because it's harder for them to process this kind of information. So the message really is, if you're finding yourself feeling overwhelmed, if you're struggling, if you're feeling like you're on this relentless mouse wheel and you just can't get off, you have to try and get off. Now, it's not healthy, like I said, to stay in those kind of vibrations, because they're quite toxic and they do take a toll on our body physically. They start to break things down in your body. If you're sort of in that hypervigilant worrying state, like, oh, have I got my mask on? Have I signed in? Did I sign out? Oh, was I there yesterday because someone had there's a case there and I could be a close contact. Living like this means you're in that real hypervigilant kind of energy, and it's very unhealthy for your system. So you've got to always find those ways to chill, relax, learn to meditate, do whatever it takes, live in the now, get outside, get back to your sort of spirit and ways of healing your soul, because that is what this is all about. This plandemic, so they call it, or pandemic if you want to see it that way, is about soul healing and healing our soul wounds, and I really believe that. So if you are struggling, look, please leave me comments below. I'd love to get your feedback, and I love hearing from you guys all around the globe. It's beautiful to touch base and see what experiences other people are having, because it is a really overwhelming and challenging time that we've all struggled with, no matter sort of where you are in the world or what sort of walks of life you're from. And like I said, even the kids as well. So, just please subscribe to my channel. I do weekly, monthly, and I do global readings as well to help people out there. I also have self-help videos that can help you if you're struggling with isolation, depression, feeling suicidal. I've got some on body language, etc. So please go check those out. Like I said, hit those like buttons, subscribe, and take care. Go and learn to live in the now and find that balance, because that is what is going to save us through these really challenging times. Bye.